graduating class, please be seated. I want to welcome all of you today to this 91st commencement at Curtis. Graduates, parents and families, faculty, trustees, staff, and friends. This is always a wonderful occasion. It's also kind of a very bittersweet occasion for us because obviously all of you that we've gotten to know so well over sometimes a few years, sometimes many years, go on to the next chapter of your life and your career, and we couldn't be more proud of everything that you've accomplished so far, and we send you to the next part of your career with tremendous enthusiasm and, looking forward to all of the great things that you will accomplish. So today we have this ceremony, which is sort of a send-off to this exciting time of your life. I was just thinking about this morning because I have my own daughter graduating from college now at the next weekend, and thinking about the 4 years that she has had in school, it reminded me that it hasn't been the easiest last 4 years. You probably came to Curtis in 2020. Some of you did. Some of you might have been here a little earlier, but it's been a tough 4 years for you and for all of us. And I think that that shouldn't go unmentioned and unnoticed. It certainly has put a lot of resilience and character building into everything that we've done, both individually and as an institution. But with that in mind, I want to welcome up here to the stage our two student speakers for this morning. Kahlan Yenney from Frisco, Texas, entered Curtis in 2020 and is the Meyer and Helen K. Schwartz Fellow. Kahlan has served this Now you're going to have to stand here while I read all kinds of nice things around you. So thanks for joining me. No, it's great. She has served as principal bassoon for the Berlin Opera Academy Orchestra and spent her most recent summer at the Aspen Music Festival playing in the festival orchestras and working with Nancy Gores and Per Hannevold. She has performed in master classes for William Short, Benjamin Kamens, Patricia Rogers, Lenny Hindell, Conrad Cornelison, Harrison Miller, and Judith Locklair. She has played in the Greater Dallas Youth Orchestra, Texas All-State Philharmonic Orchestra, High School Honors Performance Series, and the Mesquite Symphony Orchestra. We'll also be joined by Oliver Talukder from Glenview, Illinois, who entered Curtis in 2020 and is the William S. Mullerin and Joseph F. Baker Fellow. Oliver is the assistant principal oboist of Opera Philadelphia Orchestra. He was a member of the Chicago Symphony Youth Orchestra from 2016 through 2020 and played with Carnegie Hall's National Youth Orchestra of the United States of America in 2019. He has also attended the Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles National Festival and Indiana University's Summer Music Clinic. Please join me in welcoming Kahlan and Oliver this morning.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Díaz, for the introduction. Apparently, I missed when I was supposed to walk up. But I'm more used to performing with my instrument than speaking in front of people like you today. So I guess I'll start with, my name is Kahlan Yenney, and I was here studying bassoon performance for 4 years. When I was initially asked to speak at commencement, I was really excited. What an honor. But when I finally sat down to start writing, I realized what a challenge this would be. How would I condense 4 years into just a few minutes? I want to start by thanking everyone for being here today. The graduating class of 2024 is moving into a new chapter of life, and your support means the world. I can guarantee that the parents and family in this audience spent countless weekends driving us to and from lessons, youth orchestra rehearsals, competitions, I could go on. Without you, we never would have gotten to study at such a historic institution, so thank you. What started out for many of us as our first time leaving home evolved into finding a new place to call home. When I first saw Curtis in person, it was like discovering a real-life Hogwarts, for all the Harry Potter fans out there. This place has so much history, and it has become my second home. Each one of these rooms has been my room at one point or another, and I'm sure that everyone here has experienced their own version of this. First, I had a Zimbalist phase, where I could be spotted sitting in the back left window using the weird little lamp that looks like a man to scrape my reeds. When that got old, I moved into a tabby-toe phase, finishing my undergrad in Vengarova. And when all else failed, I could always count on room 1D to be open. But for some of us, we didn't step foot into Curtis for our entire first year of study. During the year that shall not be named, school was entirely online. One of the best aspects of music is collaborating with others, and for that to have been stripped away from us was devastating. Rather than playing in a wind quintet, we had to play our quintet parts individually for one another on Zoom, without a performance to look forward to. Orchestra turned into a weekly Zoom class on music history, where I developed the tradition of eating an entire pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream while viewing my classmates' turned-off cameras. And yes, I even took a public speaking class in the privacy of my own bedroom. Professor Stein would be proud to see me in front of you today. But from the ashes of remote learning, especially in the world of music, arose some of my most cherished memories. In fact, I used to hate public speaking, but during our online year, it suddenly became the only way I could connect with my peers. Eventually, a freshman woodwind group chat emerged, where we started FaceTiming and watching operas together. Oliver and I became fast friends before ever meeting each other, and now look at us, speaking at graduation together 4 years later. The relationships we have formed here will last us, not just through our careers, but for a lifetime. I've avoided sounding cliche up until this point, but it's so true. Two of some of our most inspiring teachers, Mr. Matsukawa and Mr. Rusnik, although I am a bit biased, studied here together in the 90s and have continued to be best friends to this day. I can't wait to see where the connections we have made here take all of us. Connections have made not just with fellow students, but our awesome team of collaborative pianists, incredibly patient liberal arts and musical studies teachers who, at this point, have achieved sainthood, and of course, the incomparable performance faculty. No matter how much you try to envision your future, it is these people who will play a role in shaping it in ways you never could have dreamed of. Embrace the diverse perspectives, knowledge, and opportunities all of these people bring to the table, and craft something meaningful out of it. We've been given the time to put everything into our craft, and now it's time to give back and do something with it. Congratulations, class of 2024, and may the Curtis miracle stay with you. Thank you.
Wow, I don't know how I'm going to follow that up, but I will. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Oliver Talukder, and it is such an honor to be standing before such a gifted, talented, and resilient class of Curtis graduates. I'm happy to see that Curtis time didn't apply to commencement. Wait, where's Will? Oh, there he is. Yeah. When I was asked to give this speech, which in true Curtis fashion was 9 days ago, I spent much of my time reflecting over how fast the past 4 years have gone by. It feels like just yesterday I was logging onto Dr. Chen's core studies class. As a class, we've endured many hardships and changes. We survived a full year completely online, dealt with the disappointment of canceled concerts, and stayed grounded through changes in faculty, staff, and administration. Despite this, we've demonstrated an unwavering commitment to our craft and to each other. It's during these moments of trial that the true strength of our community shines through. One of the most powerful lessons I've learned during my time at Curtis is the art of phrasing. As musicians, we're faced with designing, practicing, and executing musical phrases in everything we play. I like to think of our time at Curtis as a single phrase in the grand masterpiece that we call life. It has highs and lows, consonances and dissonances, monophony and polyphony. I'd like to invite you all to take a second and reflect on the past 2, maybe 4, 8 years, maybe at Curtis. I want you to think about some of the best moments. It might have been an exhilarating performance or the camaraderie that we shared at a joyous after party. It could be a lesson where everything magically clicked. Think about the amazing friends you've made along the way who have cheered you on during your recitals on this very stage, and for those who were there as a shoulder to cry on when you needed them the most. I'd like to now invite you to imagine what this next phase of your life might look like. Many of us will move to new cities, new schools, new jobs. What lessons and skills from Curtis will you take into this new phrase? How will it be different from the last phrase? This next part of our lives will inevitably bring many challenges, and I hope we keep these memories and connections close to our hearts, as with them we can get through any challenge. It would not be lost on me the privilege that we have today in enjoying and celebrating the 91st commencement of Curtis, our wonderful institution, all while the college students in Gaza will not be walking across the stage, as there are no more universities standing in Gaza. As we revel in this privilege of education and artistic expression, let us extend our hands in solidarity with those whose voices are silenced by injustice. My fellow graduates, music has the incredible power of bringing people together, and as the next generation of artists, I urge you all in your next phrases to use your beautiful and powerful voices, both on and off your instruments, and strive to build a future of peace, love, and community. As we embark on the next phase of our lives, know that the symphony of our collective efforts has the power to transform the world around us. Congratulations, class of 2024. We did it.
Thank you, Kahlan. Thank you, Oliver. Really wonderful words. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you now our distinguished guest speaker, Professor George Lewis. Excuse me. It always takes about 5 minutes before this happens. Composer, musicologist, computer music pioneer, teacher, and trombonist, Professor George Lewis has been called one of the most formidable figures in modern music and one of the major musical minds of our time by Alex Ross in The New Yorker. Born in Chicago in 1952, Professor Lewis took up the trombone in the 3rd grade, later writing that the instrument appealed to him as big, shiny, and weird. At Yale, he studied music theory and majored in philosophy and participated in the school's Duke Ellington Fellowship Program. Even before he graduated, Professor Lewis joined the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, the Black avant-garde collective of which he is still a member, and which was the subject of his monumental and award-winning book, A Power Stronger Than Itself, and as his first opera, Forward. Throughout his career, Professor Lewis has expanded the frontiers of experimental music with wildly inventive works that both bridge and confound boundaries and traditions. He is widely regarded as a pioneer in the creation of computer programs that improvise in concert with human musicians, and his compositions have been performed by orchestras across the world. Professor Lewis currently serves as the artistic director of the International Contemporary Ensemble, and since 2004 has been the Edwin H. Case Professor of American Music, Composition, and Historical Musicology at Columbia University. He has received numerous awards and honors, including a MacArthur Fellowship, Guggenheim Fellowship, and the Doris Duke Artist Award, and membership in the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the American Academy of Arts and Letters, among many others. Professor Lewis joined us here at Curtis this year as our composer in residence, working with our students who had the privilege of performing his music during our Ensemble 2021 Portrait of George Lewis concert last month. His second opera, The Comet, which will be juxtaposed with Monteverdi's Coronation of Poppea, premieres next month in Los Angeles, and we are thrilled to be one of the co-producers of that production, which will have its East Coast premiere with Curtis here in Philadelphia in the fall as part of our centennial season. We are honored to be working with Professor Lewis and delighted that he's able to join us here today for our commencement. Professor?
Wow. Thank you, President Díaz, for those wonderful remarks. I hope some of you were able to see and hear and experience those performances. I mean, I just recently met Curtis. That was my first time being here, just last month. You know, and I had amazing experiences working with, closely with the faculty and students here, listening to those wonderful performances by everyone. I hope some of you were able to witness those performances. I hope some of you will be able to come in the fall when when Comet Poppea is presented here. I mean, I just found out, working with faculty and students here, it's amazing just how rigorous, how questing, and simply amazing this institution is. I was working with Vimbai Kaziboni, my colleague and friend, as conductor, and he said, George, I mean, this is the best music school in the world. You knew that, right? I said, well, I strongly suspected it from what I... So it makes sense given the fact that my friend from a long time ago and colleague, Julius Eastman, the queer black composer and performer, who is now experiencing such an incredible uptick in his success as a composer, posthumously, unfortunately, still was a graduate of this institution. So I'm really honored, super stoked, as Venus Williams might say, to address you today, members of the faculty, families, friends, neighbors, and above all, graduates, the two of you who came up and gave those amazing speeches, just as a part of it, but all of you, I'd like to congratulate you all in a most heartfelt way. Now, for the next few minutes, they're not going to be that long. You told me 10 minutes. I'm going to try to stick with that. Okay. I want to make special reference to crucial lessons to be drawn from the art of music, with which I, as President Díaz said, I've been most centrally involved for over 50 years now, which is far often just dismissed in the public sphere as a charming distraction from real life with little to teach us about the crucial issues of our time, or the idea of me majoring in music, which I ended up not doing, and majored in philosophy, but then having people tell us, don't you need something to fall back on? Well, I'm going to suggest that you have to fall back on yourself, and you can fall back on what you're doing now. And here's why. One thing you eventually learn is that the amazing achievements such as yours, being celebrated today, emerge as the product of hard work, insight, and dedication, but not just by you as the individuals, dear graduates, but also by communities of practice, desire, and love, represented by all the people around us right now. And I've been a part of one such community, among others, for the past 50 years. President Díaz mentioned this, the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, or the AACM, which was born in 1965 on Chicago's South Side, where I was also born and raised, and which I joined the AACM as a teenager at the age of 19. now quite a bit older. This African-American musicians collective is now known worldwide for its many innovations in the development of American experimental music. Young black experimentalists came together to create new music in full-on collective resistance to a social, aesthetic, political, and cultural oppression that never sleeps, not even today. So my talk proceeds from a remark by the AACM trumpeter Lester Bowie that the philosopher Arnold I. Davidson once shared with me. And this is something you can take with you. Artists teach people how to live. Well, if you want to learn how to live, you can start by learning how to listen. Now, we're supposed to be good at that as musicians, right? The historian Mark M. Smith tells us that the people most sensitive to the oral world, the world of listening, in the Old South were slaves. For them, the ability to control sound and silence could mean freedom. So at one end of the sound spectrum, you have Harriet Tubman, who learned from her father how to walk soundlessly through the woods. At the other, there was blind Tom Wiggins, the 19th century child prodigy, a virtuoso pianist and composer, perhaps the first ever black American virtuoso pianist and composer to achieve international fame. His works became internationally famous even while he was a slave. He performed at the White House when he was 10 years old. He already had a repertoire of 2,000 pieces. And he was using tone clusters, noise, and that's going to be something I'm going to come back to, the making of noise. They recalled the sounds of bombs and battles of the Civil War nearly a half century before the 20th century American musical avant-garde congratulated itself on that so-called discovery. Now, a lot of the AACM's music was once denigrated, in the exact sense of that term, as noise when it first emerged. But then, according to the historian John Cruz, characterizing black music as noise dates from at least as far back as the mid-19th century, when U.S. slave owners and overseers described slave sounds as savage, strange, and incomprehensible, with no relation to history, memory, or intelligence. For Cruz, however, noise is sound out of order, resistant to capture. Noise introduces uncertainty, and both appear whenever change is in the offing. Now, come to think of it, I count myself among those people who make what some people would call noise. And noise, and the noisers who make it, like me, routinely overflow the banks of propriety, unleashing the possibility of difference, and with it, the subversive possibility of change. People hear our noise and they say, no one told me music could be like that. I wonder what else they haven't told me. Or they say, wow, that music is really different. I wonder what else could be different around here. And once they start down that road, their thoughts inevitably turn to the possibility of creating change. And we're seeing that noise right now all around the United States and beyond in response to the situation in Gaza. The ugly recrudescence of a seemingly never abating tide of anti-Semitism, the war, the plight of the Palestinians, the issues with freedom of speech and the attempts to suppress that. They've also exposed, all of this exposed the need to confront and combat a vast number of interrelated issues, many more than I can address here. But I do want to present a short musical example. The public health researcher Arlene Geronimus has identified the phenomenon of weathering as a continuous activation of physiological stress response to a systematic, worldwide, unrelenting anti-blackness, one of the many antis we have to confront nowadays. The image here is of a rock being eroded by continuous exposure to the elements. But the experiences that provoke this continuous fight or flight response can happen at any time. And the deleterious effects linger long after the experience is over. Premature aging, dysfunction of the immune, cardiovascular, and metabolic and endocrine systems, this thing, and even damage to DNA and the brain. The resulting sensory alteration recalls one of ancient Greek culture's most terrifying myths, the fate of King Sisyphus, whom the gods punished by compelling him to push an enormous boulder up a hill, only to see it roll down again, a task he was doomed to repeat endlessly throughout eternity by Zeus. And then I use this as a premise for my recent orchestral work, Weathering, with its constant and unpredictable invocation of a thick, heavy sonority that I call the "not this again" chord. which depicts this individual and communitarian weathering with its unreasonable demands for ersatz stoicism from oppressed people. So this music asks its hearers, if we get what we want, what will it sound like? This question ultimately calls for new histories, new subjectivities, and a new identity for classical music, one that would talk about a new we. But those who would suppress our speech and our music have also learned to bring noise, this time as a means of obscuring truth and confusing well-meaning people who just can't figure out who's telling the truth. Some among us are using this baleful world situation to pursue an experiment in the destruction of liberal education, whose object is the erasure of history and culture. And this is a topic I'm quite familiar with from firsthand experience as I address what I've called the cone of silence draped over the work of Afro-diasporic composers with my co-edited recent book, Composing While Black. Not to mention all those book banners who always seem to find a problem with books by LGBTQ people and people of color. And you know, they won't stop there. Your right to write, your right to rock, your right to rap is next, and classical music will not be exempt. And there are still more erasures. Our nation's refusal to kick its addition to white supremacy, homophobia, and patriarchy is triggering an autoimmune response that threatens the entire world. But even as these people are doing all that banning, they're also admitting how much they fear your awesomeness as musicians. So I'm certain that, as was memorably expressed in Frederick Shevsky's set of piano variations on The People United Will Never Be Defeated, the unstoppable, and it was said just right now by someone on this stage, one of the wonderful graduates who just gave his speech, I want to echo that by saying that the unstoppable combination of expressive awesomeness with the power of the multitude can turn back the bad faith policing of women's bodies, the militant suppression of trans identities. The history makers can turn back the history takers as we fight to keep our democracy real, to take back all the rights we've lost in just the past few years. So I'm going to leave you with a concept that builds from a saying of the great John Lewis, who I met in 2018 when we both received honorary doctorates from Harvard University. Dr. Lewis exhorted us all to get into trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. So I'd like you all to get out there, you know what to do, make some noise, some good noise, because good trouble and good noise are really the same thing, the forceful assertion of alternatives in the face of oppression. So I thank all of you again for this honor, and I hope that you can all join me in making that good noise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really, really wonderful. Thank you. It is my pleasure to now introduce Curtis Trustee Anthony Kramer, who will join us on stage for the honorary degree conferral. Anthony?
Good morning, graduates. Thank you for your artistry the last 2, 4, 6, 8 years. We're really going to miss you. We shall now confer the honorary degree, Doctor of Music, on George Lewis. In recognition of services rendered to music education in particular, and specifically to the Curtis Institute of Music, by virtue of the authority vested in me, the officers and members of the Board of Trustees of the Curtis Institute of Music hereby admit George Lewis to the degree of Doctor of Music, granting all the rights, honors, and privileges pertaining thereto.
It is my pleasure to now introduce Dr. Eva Swidler, Interim Chair of Liberal Arts, who will present the Landis Award.
I think I'm going to take this off too. The Joan Hutton Landis Award for Excellence in Academics is named for Professor Emerita Joan Hutton Landis. Dr. Landis served as chair of the Liberal Arts Department for 24 years and was an inspiring teacher, mentor, and avid supporter of young musicians' careers. Thanks to Dr. Landis's leadership, the study of great literature and art is a vital part of the Curtis curriculum. Students who took a poetry or Shakespeare class with her can attest to her inventive wit and intellectual gifts, and to the ways in which her extraordinary teaching broadened and deepened their Curtis experience and their lives as artists. Today, I am pleased to award the 2024 Joan Hutton Landis Award for Excellence in Academics to Alexander Leonardi.
It is my pleasure to now introduce Mr. Jonathan Coopersmith, the Chair of Musical Studies, who will present the Aldwell Award.
The Curtis Musical Studies curriculum is based upon the rigorous study of traditional musical craft. We believe that an intimate knowledge of the musical techniques as practiced by the greatest composers themselves bring us closest to their music. The Edward Aldwell Award for Excellence in Musical Studies, established in honor of Edward Aldwell, who served on the Curtis Musical Studies faculty for 35 years, is presented to a graduating student who has demonstrated outstanding ability and performance in musical studies throughout his or her undergraduate years at Curtis. It is my great pleasure to present the 2024 Edward Aldwell Award for Excellence in Musical Studies to Toby Vigneault.
It is my pleasure to now introduce Ms. Mary Javian, the Chair of Career Studies, who will present the Provost's Award for Achievement in Career Studies. Mary?
The Curtis Career Studies curriculum provides opportunities for Curtis students to build necessary skills in technology, pedagogy, entrepreneurship, and community-based projects, often in partnership with organizations throughout the Philadelphia area. It is my pleasure to present the 2024 Provost Award for Achievement in Career Studies to Adrienne Wong.
It is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Patricia Carpino, Curtis's Senior Associate Dean of Student Affairs, who will present the Provost Award for Outstanding Citizenship.
Students come to Curtis to become great performers, but during their enrollment, learn that who they are is every bit as valuable to the school community as what they do. The Provost's Award for Outstanding Citizenship recognizes a graduating student that has contributed to the Curtis community through their integrity, compassion, involvement, responsibility, and respectfulness. I am so pleased to present the 2024 Provost's Award for outstanding citizenship to Leah Amick.
Mr. Edward Gazouleas, the Guy and Lisa Liem Artistic Director and Provost, will present the Milka Violin Artist's Prize. Ed?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And it's great to see you. And I'm glad that Professor Lewis invoked the myth of Sisyphus with the boulder going up the hill, because I sometimes felt like Viola study was very much like that myth. Each of you have spent years pushing that boulder up, and congratulations on getting it to the top. The Milka Violin Artist Prize is awarded to a graduating violinist who's committed to participating in international violin competitions during the year after graduation. The prize is funded by Mr. George Markov Totevi and the Markov Totevi Foundation in memory of Mr. Markov Totevi's mother, Milka, who was a gifted teacher of young violinists for many years. It gives me great pleasure and pride to present this award this year to a violinist who served as concertmaster this year at the Curtis Orchestra, Lingyu Dong.
Dean Amy Yang will present the Angelo Silvestro Feztorazzi Scholarship and the Mellon Prize. Amy?
The Angelo Silvestro Feztorazzi Scholarship was established by the estate of Marguerite Feztorazzi to recognize promising voice students. And the Mellon Prize was established by the estate of Marguerite Feztorazzi, again, to recognize promising piano students. It gives me great pleasure to present the 2024 Feztorazzi Scholarship to Eric Toft. Woo! I'm so proud and pleased to present the 2024 Mellon Prize to Avery Galliano.
It is my pleasure to now introduce Mr. Daniel Matsukawa, who will present the Hunter, Johnson, and Vernon Woodwind Prize. Danny?
If I may offer my congratulations to the class of 2024. In about half an hour, you please address me as my first name, as we will become colleagues. I had noticed the last couple of years, or few years, attending these commencement ceremonies, that there was always a prize and award given to just about every other disciple, like voice, piano, violin, etc., as you see here today. And I quickly grew jealous that there was not a woodwind award. So I'm extremely grateful that for the first time ever, a woodwind prize was created by Curtis alumna Marcia Hunter, voice 77, her husband Brian Johnson, and longtime Curtis patrons, Dr. Thomas and Mrs. Patricia Vernon. The Hunter, Johnson, and Vernon Woodwind Prize honors an outstanding woodwind musician as selected by the woodwind faculty. I must also add that I had no say in this selection process, truly. Just to borrow a couple of words from the great George Lewis, I am super stoked to present the inaugural Hunter, Johnson, and Vernon Woodwind Prize to Asha Klein.
Danny, I have to say that's easier said than done. Calling your teacher by their first name takes a certain amount of courage at first. That when I joined the Boston Symphony, my teacher was the principal violist, and he used to yell at me backstage because I wouldn't call him Burton. I just could not do it. I couldn't do it. Dean DiBerardino will present the Alfredo Casella Award and the Presser Scholar Award. Nick?
Created by and named for our longtime Curtis patron, the Charles Miller Award honors outstanding musicians through 3 established prizes: the Fritz Kreisler Award for violin, the Sergei Rachmaninoff Award for piano, and the Alfredo Casella Award for composition. The award is given on a rotating basis to students who've excelled in these areas. I am super stoked to present the 2024 Alfredo Casella Award to Maya Johnson. Through the generosity of the Presser Foundation, Curtis is able to recognize the outstanding achievements of a graduating student who exemplifies high academic and musical accomplishment, leadership, and citizenship through the Presser Scholar Award. It gives me great pleasure, and I am super stoked, to present the 2024 Presser Scholar Award to Oliver Talukder. It's now my pleasure to introduce Andrew Senn, organ, class of 2000, who will perform Chaconne by Orpha Aksa.
Thank you, Andrew. That's very beautiful. Thank you. Dean DiBerardino will now present the candidates for the Curtis Institute of Music Certificate, Diploma, and Post-Baccalaureate Diploma.
Will the candidates please rise? Mr. President, I present for the certificate, diploma, and post-baccalaureate diploma of the Curtis Institute of Music these candidates who have been approved by the faculty and the provost.
By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees, I confer upon you this diploma, officially signed and sealed with the seal of the corporation in recognition of the honorable and satisfactory completion of your studies at the Institute.
Morgan Andrew King, Taharoa, Waikato, Aotearoa, New Zealand, majoring in opera with Mr. Levini. Eric J. Toft, Binghamton, New York, majoring in opera with Mr. Schneibly. Chita Chen, in absentia, Kaohsiung, Taiwan, majoring in viola with Mr. Amory and Mr. Díaz. Michael Shaham, in absentia, Tel Aviv, Israel, majoring in violin with Mr. Ashkenazi and Ms. Kavafian. Diogo da Costa Fernandez, Villanova da Famalicão, majoring in trombone with Mr. Haroz and Mr. Vaughn. Micah Gleason, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, majoring in conducting with Maestro Neze Seguin. Dong-Young Shim, in absentia, Seoul, Korea, majoring in violin with Mr. Ashkenazi and Ms. Kavafian. Hanul Park, Seoul, Korea, majoring in viola with Mr. Amory, Mr. Díaz, and Ms. Huang. Will the graduates please be seated?
Dean DiBerardino will now present the candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Music.
Will the candidates please rise? Mr. President, I present for the degree of Bachelor of Music these candidates who have been approved by the faculty and the provost and who have met the requirements of the State Board of Education of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees, I confer the degree of Bachelor of Music, admitting you to all the rights and privileges which pertain to that degree throughout the world. In token of which, I present this degree, officially signed and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
Maya Miro Johnson, majoring in composition with Dr. Daniel Poor, Dr. Higdon, Dr. Holland, Dr. Kirsten, Dr. Ludwig, Dr. Mackey, and me. Alexander Leonardi, Amityville, New York, majoring in organ with Mr. Morrison. Elias Ackerley, in absentia, Shrewsbury, United Kingdom, majoring in piano with Mr. Grafman and Mr. Liu. Avery Galliano, Washington, D.C., majoring in piano with Mr. Biss, Mr. Grafman, and Mr. McDonald. Anton Mejias, Helsinki, Finland, majoring in piano with Mr. Grafman and Mr. Solzhenitsyn. Lingyu Dong, Shandong, People's Republic of China, majoring in violin with Ms. Goto and Mr. Steinhardt. Yesong Sophie Lee, in absentia, Lawrence, Kansas, majoring in violin with Mr. Ashkenazi and Mr. Steinhardt. Sophia Gilchanok, Columbia, Connecticut, majoring in viola with Mr. Amory and Ms. Huang. Matthew Christakos, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, majoring in cello with Mr. Bray, Mr. Hoffman, and Mr. Wiley. Nigel Francis Witherspoon, Minneapolis, Minnesota, majoring in cello with Mr. Wiley. Jason Henry, Sydney, Australia, majoring in double bass with Mr. Meyer and Mr. Robinson. Tobias Matthew Vigneault, Albuquerque, New Mexico, majoring in double bass with Mr. Meyer and Mr. Robinson. Cameron Slayton, in absentia, Franklin, Ohio, majoring in oboe with Ms. Needleman, Mr. Tondra, and Mr. Woodhams. Oliver Jamal Talukder, Glenview, Illinois, majoring in oboe with Ms. Needleman, Mr. Tondra, and Mr. Woodhams. Yejin An, Seoul, Korea, majoring in clarinet with Mr. McGill. Asha Klein, Ellicott City, Maryland, majoring in bassoon with Mr. Matsukawa. Kahlan Elizabeth Yenney, Frisco, Texas, majoring in bassoon with Mr. Matsukawa. Raul Orellana, San Juan, Puerto Rico, majoring in trumpet with Mr. Bilger. Derek Gullett, Uniontown, Ohio, majoring in trombone with Mr. Harose and Mr. Vaughn. Will the graduates please be seated?
Dean DiBernardino will now present the candidates for the degree of Master of Music.
Will the candidates please rise? Mr. President, I present for the degree of Master of Music these candidates who have been approved by the faculty and the Provost and who have met the requirements of the State Board of Education of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
By virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees, I confer upon you the degree of Master of Music, admitting you to all the rights and privileges which pertain to that degree throughout the world, in token of which I present you with this degree, officially signed and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
Leah Amick, Boulder, Colorado, majoring in composition with Dr. Danielpour, Dr. Holland, Dr. Kirsten, Dr. Mackey, and me. Chi-Chun Adrian Wong, Hong Kong, majoring in composition with Dr. Danielpour, Dr. Holland, Dr. Kirsten, Dr. Mackey, and me. Kawan Kim, in absentia, Seoul, Korea, majoring in violin with Mr. Ashkenazi. So-Young Cho, in absentia, Seoul, Korea, majoring in viola with Mr. Amory and Mr. Gazouleas. William Thomas McGregor, Ann Arbor, Michigan, majoring in double bass with Mr. Meyer and Mr. Robinson. Claire Tai, Tucson, Arizona, majoring in harp with Ms. Hainan. Justin Bernardi, Keller, Texas, majoring in trumpet with Mr. Bilger. Ethan Marmolejos, Watchung, New Jersey, majoring in tuba with Mr. Knox and Mr. Krizwicki. Tay McLaughlin. South Orange, New Jersey, majoring in timpani and percussion with Mr. Liuzzi, Ms. Jung, Mr. Milstein, and Mr. Van Sice.
Will the entire graduating class please rise? I'm thrilled to present to you the class of 2024. Congratulations. Please be seated. You have just become members of a very, very special group. As such, I would like to now introduce our good friend and alumna, Yumi Kendall, cello in 2004, who will welcome you on behalf of Curtis alumni worldwide. Yumi?
Congratulations, class of 2024. Thank you, President Díaz, for the invitation, for allowing me to welcome you to the worldwide family of over 2,800 fellow Curtis alumni. As Oliver so eloquently spoke about earlier, graduation is not just a time of celebration and great joy celebrating your accomplishments. It is also a time of reflection. And as I stand in front of you here today, I think about my own Curtis treasure chest filled with gems from my time here, my memories and my experiences here that each of you also carry. And I'd like to share one gem with you and an anecdote to give food for thought as you go off and embark on your own journeys. That gem, 1E, Schubert Arpeggione Sonata with a beloved mentor, Claude Frank, and he quoted, "The music is always better than it can be played. The music is always better than it can be played." For me, these words encompass my forever student identity. They embody the curiosity, the constant questioning of being an artist, that we're never finished. We must always be asking what more could be, what else could be. And I want to share with you an anecdote about how this gem from 1E and Mr. Frank opened up unexpected doors for me years later. In 2011, my beloved Philadelphia Orchestra, I've been the assistant principal cello with the Philadelphia Orchestra for 20 years now, and in 2011, the Philadelphia Orchestra went through a Chapter 11 bankruptcy reorganization. It was as scary as it sounds. Musicians felt powerless. We were actually powerless. We didn't have any decision-making in our livelihoods. And we felt scared, and I felt helpless. I don't like feeling helpless. I like to know what I can do to contribute and to make things better beyond just playing my heart out on stage. And I found myself asking questions like, what do other industries do when they face challenge? What do other organizations do when they have these obstacles? What do other people do when they feel helpless, the way I felt, when there's energy to give and no pathway? And I found myself at the then Barnes & Noble at the corner of 18th and Walnut, back then, and reading tons of books in what ended up being the business section on leadership and power and authority and motivation. And I emailed many of the authors there asking about the implications of their research on our field. What can we learn from other industries and other folks that might help my beloved Philadelphia Orchestra through this process? And long story short, I emailed Adam Grant, who's a professor at Wharton. He emailed me right back the next morning and connected me with folks at the Positive Psychology Center at Penn. Jonathan is here. And with the professors there. And I ended up applying to and earning my Master's of Applied Positive Psychology from Penn. Positive psychology, briefly, is the science of well-being. It asks what makes us flourish at the individual level. What makes us flourish in a dyadic, in a relationship like teachers and students or mentors, or colleagues on stage, a stand partner, for example? What makes us thrive as organizations, as societies, even as orchestras, as a microcosm of society? And I got to ask questions like, what does trust look like on stage? What does trust look like in an organization? What does trust look like when it needs to be rebuilt, if that may be the case? What does intrinsic motivation mean? What is it to love something for its own sake? What does it mean to have so much meaning in your work, so much connection to what you do, that you identify your work as a calling? These were some of the questions and the doors that opened for me from that gem at Curtis that opened up doors. And for each of you, as you embark on your own journeys through these doors, I invite you to think about, like Oliver spoke about, your own Curtis treasure box and your own gems that you will take with you that may be shiny right now, that maybe years later will also shine and open doors for you. And let me be the first alumni on the other side of those doors to welcome you with wide open arms to a huge support network of caregivers and torchbearers of our art out there, and to welcome you as the first alumni out there. Congratulations to the class of 2024. Thank you.
What am I supposed to say after Yumi, after Dr. Lewis, Kahlan, Oliver? Really, truly wonderful. We've had over the years, some amazing, amazing words at commencement. I think this year is certainly one of those highlights. So much to think about and so much to consider as we move forward. You know, I can't help but think sometimes when I'm listening to the speakers at commencement, you know, and just sort of reflect about the year that we've had, or the last few years, or the time at Curtis that you know, the graduating class has experienced. And as we mentioned throughout the ceremony today, it's been challenging times, but you know, there's so much good that has come out of it. And you know, going back to the words that Yumi just mentioned about, you know, the Philadelphia Orchestra going into chapter 11, and when I started with the orchestra a few years earlier, we had a very terrible strike that went on for a number of weeks. And it actually forces the institution, and it forces the members of an institution, everybody, trustees, the staff, management, and musicians, to actually become innovators. And in many ways, that's one of the things that I think I would like to understand as the Curtis experience, is that we give you the possibility to think outside the box, and the courage to think outside the box. One of my favorite sayings actually is, tradition is innovation that sticks. it is there's so much to unpack there. But think about it, tradition is innovation that sticks. And we rely a lot on traditions. You know, we have a traditional idea of what playing in an orchestra is, or being part of an opera company, or forming your own ensemble. And yet, we rely on this idea of traditionally what do we think that is. But then we see that things happen that are way beyond our control, whether it's a pandemic or it's social movements, and it forces us to reckon with the fact that we can't just forget that we live in this world, in this society, and we have to learn to function in it and to actually innovate to serve it better. Never have I seen what we do become more important and more relevant than when there's a really tough time that we're experiencing. People always turn to music. It's amazing. No matter where you're from, no matter what you do, people turn to music. It's the one place where they can find sort of a common language that they can all relate to. I think that it's amazing to think that we get the opportunity to go out there and innovate and make what we do, and the experiences that you had here, especially with each other, and become members of society that will actually make it even more so when it comes to the importance of what we do. A huge congrats to all of you, and I couldn't be prouder, and all very best to each and every one of you. And come back. Stay connected. Next year, it's our 100th anniversary. We expect to see you back. All my best. Congratulations.
Thank you, President Díaz. Thank you, class of 2024. Would everyone please rise for the graduate recession?
if you don't mind just speaking in